Thank you, Larry. Thank you so much, Larry. I am delighted to introduce our keynote speaker, Stephanie Stuckey, CEO of Stuckey's. As many of you know, Stuckey's has been known for generations as a highway oasis, serving up pecan rolls and kitschy souvenirs. Founded in 1937 by her grandfather, W.S. Stuckey Sr. in Eastman, Georgia, Stuckey's grew to over 350 stores nationwide by its peak in the 1970s. The company was sold in 1964 and sadly declined for decades under a series of corporate owners. Fortunately, Stuckey's is now back in family hands and making a comeback, thanks to the acquisition of a pecan shelling and candy plant. Stephanie received both her undergraduate and law degrees from the University of Georgia. She worked as a trial lawyer, was elected to 7 terms as a state representative, ran an environmental law firm, served as Director of Sustainability for Atlanta, and taught as an Adjunct Professor at the University of Georgia School of Law. Stephanie purchased Stuckey's in November of 2019 and assumed the role of CEO. Stephanie's achievements include being named one of the most admired CEOs of 2022 by the Atlanta Business Chronicle, 100 Most Influential Georgians by Georgia Trend Magazine, and a graduate of Leadership Atlanta. She serves on the corporate board of Bealls, a Florida-based retailer with more than 550 stores. The Stuckey story has been featured recently in the New York Times Sunday Business section, the Today Show, as well as the Washington Post. When she's not running Stuckey's, Stephanie enjoys traveling by car to explore the back roads of America and pulling over at every boiled peanut stand and the world's largest ball of twine. Please join me in welcoming Stephanie Stuckey.
Thank you so much. And when Larry called me to invite me to speak at this event, I have to say I was taken aback because I looked at the roster of people on the agenda and I saw amazing talent like Teresa with Warner Brothers, Bill with NCR. We have global billion-dollar corporations speaking today like Google and Coca-Cola. And this is what I do. Like John said, I took over my family's business 3 years ago, and those of you not familiar with our brand, and it's okay if you're not, because we were super popular in the 1960s. It's been a minute, so it's okay if you don't know what we do. But unlike some of the other companies here that sell world-class technology services and products, this is what you can find at Stuckey's. These are actual products that I purchased at a Stuckey store. We sell ashtrays in the shapes of toilets that say, "Put your butts here." I don't know what that alligator thing is that's wearing a boa and playing an accordion. I got that at the Stuckey's in Welsh, Louisiana, and we're most famous for our pecan log rolls. When I bought our company 3 years ago, we were 6 figures in debt, and the sum total of our assets was a dusty rented warehouse in Eastman, Georgia, full of merchandise, much of which had not turned in over a decade, including we had 6 cases of Britney Spears t-shirts. Thank God she made a comeback. So that's my first week on the job with my new role. None of the stores that John mentioned in the introductory remarks, those 350 stores in 40 states, they were all gone. Only 13 still remained. We don't own or operate any of them. The candy plant my grandfather once ran, long shuttered. So this was the sum total of our assets. So unlike other companies here that have $1 billion in assets, access to high-tech technology, services, and products, this is what Stuckey's does. And we're here in the heart of Atlanta, one of the most diverse and educated cities in the world, with first-class institutions like Morehouse and Spelman, Clark Atlanta, Georgia Tech. And I'm CEO of a pecan company that is in Rennes, Georgia. Population 2,900, 10% of the population has a college degree. And the average household income is $37,000. I checked the census data this week, by the way, and it said that there were 0 companies that weren't owned by white males. So clearly it needs to be updated, because there's a new CEO in Rennes, Georgia, and it is not a he. So I've got to make sure we update the census data, but this gives you a picture of the company I run and where I am. But I say all this to say that despite these glaring differences, I think my story, and thank you, Larry, for agreeing that my story belongs as part of this conference, because we need more small businesses at the table in these conversations, talking about innovation and talking about diversity. 99% of companies in America are small businesses, and 1 in 5 Americans live in rural communities. So it's important that we are at the table, and let's face it, here in Georgia, most of our political leadership hails from small communities and talk about the importance of rural communities. So I think having voices like mine in these rural communities, doing our best to make a difference. And when I talk about equity and inclusion, I can tell you I don't get this nodding up and down and that's a great idea. I get these stares like, why are we talking about this? But it's really important to be fully inclusive, to engage all communities, especially communities like Rennes, Georgia, where I am. And I recognize that for some businesses, DEI is a challenging concept, because it's hard to quantify it sometimes, especially in the world that I live in, on a balance sheet. But I can really relate to this concept, because when I bought Stuckey's, we were 6 figures in debt. You'll appreciate this. I had 0 business background. I think most of you in the room probably have some business background. And I remember looking at our balance sheet, and I was encouraged because it said $135,000. And I took it to a financial expert to get their opinion, and they said, there's parentheses around that, Stephanie. And then they said, well, what is your EBITDA? And I thought EBITDA was a Swedish rock band. I did not know anything about running a company. And thank God I didn't, because I would have never bought Stuckey's. Nobody in their right mind would have done that. But why I bought the company is because I saw what wasn't on the balance sheet. I saw the value of the brand. I saw what my grandfather had built. I knew the way we made people feel and the way we treated people. And that is not something that you'll ever see on a balance sheet. And so I can appreciate things like equity and inclusion and diversity and innovation. It doesn't always translate as easily into figures, but it does translate 100%. Without that, you cannot build a brand. You cannot build a business. And that's why I'm standing here today, being able to be successful with our business, is because you see beyond what's in black and white on the balance sheet. So since a lot of you probably have not heard of our company or don't really know us other than maybe you've heard of a pecan log roll, I'll give you a brief history. This is my grandfather. He started Stuckey's in 1937 during the Great Depression. So anyone who tells you that economic hard times is a terrible time to start a business, or COVID is a terrible time to buy your family's business in debt, I disagree. I actually think hard times are the absolute best time to start a business. And when you look at the history of businesses in this country, Microsoft, Target, Facebook, Uber, the list goes on and on. So many companies that we know today and respect, Amazon, were founded during economic hard times, because that's what builds grit. And so my grandfather was during the Great Depression. He had to drop out of college, and he was selling pecans on the side of the road to make ends meet. And he grew from that humble pecan stand in Eastman, Georgia, to, at its peak, we had 368 stores in 40 states. We were really the first roadside retail chain. So before TA, Love's, Pilot, Buc-ee's, there was Stuckey's. And if you went to our store, that's what you would experience. That could have been me. I grew up in that era. I was in the back of the Woody station wagon doing this to get the trucks to honk, playing with the CB radio. So we had this whole history where our company was the DNA of the road trip and the fun of exploring America by car. And so that's what our brand was at its peak. But like any great story, I think you have to have a downfall, and this was our downfall. My grandfather sold the company to Pet Dairy Corporation, and then Pet got bought out by a Chicago railroad conglomerate, and then there was another corporate owner. So there was a series of corporate owners that frankly trashed our brand. I can tell you that a Chicago railroad conglomerate does not get a kitschy roadside brand that sells rubber alligators and pecan log rolls. So they sold off our assets, and there was almost nothing left. And then we had the Arab oil embargo. People stopped stopped driving. And then Delta, thank goodness, we had changes in the airline rules and regulations. So domestic air travel became affordable. So all of these factors was like this perfect storm where America's flying more, they're driving less, our company gets sold, everything goes down, and our company flounders. But what made our company survive, despite all of these hard times, is what this conference is about. It was how we treated people. It was having a sense of purpose. It was having an understanding of values and something much bigger than making a profit. So this is the most important thing I learned about our company. Even though I didn't have a background in business, I got my grandfather's papers. And when I bought the company, I spent every night reading through his papers. That was the best gift I got. And I learned our family's history, reading through the papers. And the most interesting thing that I learned was this. When my grandfather ran Stuckey's, he had a saying, every traveler is a friend. I saw that throughout his papers, and I even saw it framed. And my father told me he had that over his desk. But what I learned was that it wasn't just a saying that he had on his desk. It was how he ran his business, and it was how he lived his life. He treated everyone who came in contact with our brand, whether you came in the store or you purchased some of our products, he treated people as a friend. And that was proven, the best example of it was during the 1940s and 50s when the Jim Crow laws were fully in effect, especially in the Deep South where we're based. We were never segregated. Many, many places on the interstate were whites only. Stuckey's was always an open, safe, welcoming oasis. Anyone could come. So if you've seen the movie The Green Book, there's a scene at Stuckey's. It's the most important scene in my opinion. But if you haven't seen the movie, see the movie, The Green Book. I'm sure most of you know about that, but it was the road guide that would tell African Americans where they could safely pull over. And Stuckey's is in the movie because we were always open to everyone. So fast forward 30 years, I am running for office in the Georgia legislature. I'm actually running for re-election. I had been redistricted. I went from a district that was 97% white to 67% African American. And I was running against the president of the local NAACP. I did not think I was going to win, but I decided I was going to run again. I thought I still had a lot to serve, and I went to see the most influential black preacher in the community. And I went to worship there, And during the service, he asked me to come up and say a few words of inspiration, and I got up there and I thought I did a pretty good job. Afterwards, he brings me back into his office, and I felt like this is when he's going to tell me he wasn't going to support me. And he said, "I'm going to back you. I'm endorsing you." And I said, "Wow, I must have done a really good job in the pulpit." And he said, "Oh, no, that's not it." He said, "It's your grandfather. It was how he treated people who look like me. We were always welcome at Stuckey's. That's why I'm endorsing you." So when I talk to people about purpose and equity and inclusion, that's purpose. It lives on 40 years after you're gone. My grandfather died when I was 11 years old. If you are truly living and running your company, and the way you live should be the way you run your business and the way you do your work. If it is purpose-driven and if it's treating people with respect and kindness, that's going to live on for decades. And it's not just going to help your granddaughter get reelected. It's going to create a brand. It's going to create a sense of community. And that is the reason why, despite all the hard times, I am convinced that our brand is still around. We should, by all accounts, have gone bankrupt by now. We've been out of family hands for decades. We were selling ashtrays shaped like toilets, for Pete's sake. But I cannot tell you how many times people come up to me and say, "I love the way I felt when I pulled over at your stores. I was always treated well." I spoke up yesterday in Braselton, Georgia. An elderly black woman came up to me afterwards, almost in tears, and said, "I'm in Sandersville, Georgia. Every single vacation we took as a kid, we always stopped at Stuckey's." And she said, "I thought it was because my father loved your pecan log rolls." And she said, because I told this story, she said, "Now I know why. Now I know why we always stopped. He wouldn't tell me that we couldn't go anywhere else." So that, to me, is equity and inclusion. So bringing the company back around, this is, by the way, what the 13 original stores look like. Not so great, and we don't own or operate any of them. So what I have done to rebuild our company is invest in community and invest in manufacturing. So we're truly getting back to our roots. The pecan is Georgia's native nut. Georgia is the #1 state for pecan production. I don't know how many of you know that. But instead of snacking on the peanut or the macadamia nut or the Brazil nut or the cashew or the almond, we should be all snacking on the pecan. And the way we are bringing the company back is all about equity and inclusion. It is focusing on local product sourced from local farmers in small town Georgia where we're growing jobs. And so that's my business partner. He's my cousin. He's a pecan farmer. And we have purchased a candy plant in Rennes, Georgia. And we're about to renovate and expand and have the distribution center move there as well. So that's our distribution center employees. But what we have done, even though we can't afford a DEI officer, I would love that someday. You're looking at, I guess, the DEI officer because I'm the one who's always reminding everyone how important this is. But we can afford to treat everyone in our workforce with respect and provide them with a pathway to prosperity. So what we've done is we've given 3 rounds of pay raises for our frontline workers. We're almost at double the starting wages. We're very close. We're like 50 cents away. Yes. We're offering health care benefits. There were no health care benefits when we bought the manufacturing facility. And it was over 100 employees. We were kind of out of compliance with the law, or the prior person was. And we've created a cross-training program between teams to allow for education, advancement, and we're showing people that there is a pathway to prosperity, that if you want a job at Stuckey's in Rennes, Georgia, you can make that your career and you can stay there your whole life. But most importantly, what I'm trying to do is throughout our work is make sure that we are showing our employees, and our workforce is right at 50% African American, that we're showing them that we're not just talking about they have an opportunity, but we're showing it. And here's an example. We were interviewing potential insurance companies, and we had 3 firms pitch to us. Each firm had a team, okay? Every single insurance firm team was a white male. So no disrespect, I love white men. I married one, I have a white male child. But that does not look like our company, and it does not look like our community, and it does not look like our country. So I texted everyone in the room and our leadership team, and I said, they're all white males. And I could see when they were looking down, and their faces just turned red. And I said, I shouldn't have to ask this. I said, all I ask is that we have one minority firm at the table for an interview. That's it, just at the table to bid. And one of my managers said, oh, well, I don't know any minority-owned firms. And I said, okay, watch me, give me 10 minutes. I will find someone. 10 minutes, I found someone. Okay, it's not that hard. It's not that hard. And we had a blind process. We reviewed all the bids, not knowing where they came from. Guess who won the bid? The minority-owned firm. And guess who came to our candy plant to give the presentation to our 49% black population workforce? An African-American man, an African-American woman. So that's what matters when you're trying to show people that they have a pathway to prosperity. It can't just be a bunch of white dudes up there. Again, no disrespect. And innovation and technology, I did want to touch on that because this is a tech conference. It's not just about a new app or some fancy software, although that certainly can be. But for a lot of us that are small businesses and can't afford a lot of that software, this is our warehouse, okay? I would love, I talk to people about our warehouse and they say, oh, do you have those scanners? Do you have all that equipment that allows you to instantaneously track your inventory? I would love that. I got a quote on that. We can't afford it. So we're innovating the best we can, doing things that we're able to implement on the front lines. And the most important thing we're doing is we're listening. So this was actually taken this week. That's a Cyber Monday. We spent all day packing orders. We packed 300 online orders, which for us is a big deal. Our online sales are up 550%. And so we're packing these orders, and several people on the team made recommendations for ways that we could improve our processes. So innovation is listening to your frontline workers, responding to what they're saying. We've already implemented several of the improvements that they've suggested to us. Oh, and that's just a picture of our candy plant. And then I wanted to show, this is one of my last slides. How am I on time, Larry? Okay. This is the candy plant when my grandfather ran it. And one of my very earliest memories is walking through this candy plant with him. And the most important part of that memory, I'll be honest, was tasting the brittle right as it was made, because they would pour the hot brittle onto this cold marble table, and it would harden up and it would crack, and then you could eat it on the spot. So that was my favorite part of the memory. But the other thing I remember is that he knew every single worker by name. Black, white, male, female, young, old. It could be a 17-year-old high school student who was working there in the summers. He not only knew their names, but he knew their families. And he would say, how's your mom? How are things at church? Whatever. He knew them. And he had hundreds of employees. And so that, just knowing people's names is so important, treating people with respect. So what I did, because we have 120 employees now. So in 3 years, we've gone from 6 full-time employees to, we're at about 120 right now. We're 100 full-time employees, and peak season 120. So I still am learning everyone's names, but what I did was I got every employee a sweatshirt that has their name on the back. So That's helping me a lot. And it's about creating pathways to prosperity. And the last story I'm going to tell is the story of Raza and his family. So his last name is Raza, but everyone calls him Raza, and that's his brother Kazan. And they're from Pakistan. They came to this country not really speaking the language. They were not US citizens. He bought one convenience store, and that convenience store used to be a Stuckey's. It was no longer a Stuckey's. And people kept stopping and saying, why don't you sell pecan log rolls? And he's like, what's a pecan log roll? No clue. So he ended up partnering with Stuckey's. He licensed his store, made it a Stuckey's again, started selling Stuckey's products, became very successful with it. He now owns and operates 7 Stuckey's stores. He is our biggest fan. Out of all our, we only have these 13 stores. We have 70 licensed locations. Out of all of those 70 locations, and all the other owners, with the exception of a handful, are American, born and raised. Raza is our biggest champion. He loves Stuckey's. He loves America. So that's what we're trying to build, is that there is a place for you, and we want you to prosper. And he's about to open another Stuckey's, and I couldn't be more excited for him. So I'm going to close with my lessons from an 87-year-old startup. I very much feel like I'm running a startup, given how we started. But diversity and innovation is for everyone, including us small businesses and rural communities. The human return on investment is just as important as what you see on your financial statement. DEI is about treating everyone as a friend. It's about creating that sense of community and that sense of belonging. And I will tell you that it's working. We've gone from 6 figures in debt to, we closed out last year a little over 13 million gross sales, and we're hoping to hit 15 million this year. So please go buy some more pecan log rolls. Make me very happy, and we'll continue with our mission. This is my information, how you can reach me. I am learning every day, and that's what I love. Even though I run a business in Converge, Georgia, and I spend a lot of time there, I am still an Atlanta resident, and I feel so blessed to be in a community that is so diverse, that is so full of culture and education and opportunity. And I really think that is why we're able to make this little business in Converge, Georgia, be so open to diversity and equity, is because I'm at the center of it here, and I get to take what I'm learning here in Atlanta and bring it to this small community. And I think that's how we can really start implementing change. So I'm here to learn from you as well. I look forward to hearing from you. If you don't get a chance to talk to me here, please email me or hit me up on social media. I'm even on TikTok. So you can find me, and I would love to connect with you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your attention.